So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Fell in Love with Fubuki? So let's start the series. Fubuki's jaw tightened as the shockwave from the creature's collapse sent a gust of wind whipping through her hair, scattering the tactical formations she had meticulously planned. She hadn't given the order to strike. She hadn't even finished her assessment of the enemy's threat level. One moment, the tiger-level menace, a hulking, multi-limbed brute of twisted concrete and rebar, was bearing down on her position team. The next, it was a cloud of dust and pebbles, its upper torso obliterated. Standing in the crater where the monster's chest had been was a man she didn't recognize. He was dressed in a worn, orange and black jacket that looked like it belonged in a military surplus bin or a very specific subculture she wasn't aware of. His most defining feature, aside from the absurdly bright clothing, was the mop of sun-kissed blonde hair and the three faint, whisker-like marks on each cheek. He wasn't even looking at the monster's remains. He was staring at his own hands with an expression of mild, almost bored surprise. "Sorry!" the man called out, his voice carrying an easy, unbothered tone that immediately grated on her nerves. He jogged over, stepping over chunks of debris as if they were pebbles on a path. "Saw it was about to swing on you guys. Looked like it would have hurt." Fubuki's Blizzard group members, Hellish Blizzard and Lily, looked from the stranger to her, their faces a mixture of relief and uncertainty. They were waiting for her lead. She was their leader, their shield, their strategist. And this interloper had just rendered all of that irrelevant. "We had the situation under control," Fubuki stated, her voice cold and precise, cutting through the settling dust. She stepped forward, her dark hair swaying with the controlled motion. "A Class B threat requires a coordinated response to minimize collateral damage and ensure civilian safety. Your intervention was reckless." The blond man stopped a few feet away, blinking. His eyes were a startling clear blue. "Reckless? I stopped it from smashing you guys, didn't I? Seemed pretty straightforward." "Straightforward?" Fubuki repeated, a sliver of heat entering her tone. She gestured with a perfectly manicured hand toward the crater. "You destroyed the primary target before we could confirm the absence of secondary cores or explosive components. You created a debris field that could have injured the civilians we were in the process of evacuating from the eastern sector." She was embellishing, but only slightly. The principle was sound. He had acted alone, without regard for the bigger picture. The man scratched the back of his head, a gesture so casual it was almost insulting. "Ah man, I didn't think about all that. I just saw a monster and, well, it's what I do." He offered a grin that was likely meant to be disarming. It wasn't working. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'm kind of new to this whole hero association thing. Just registered." "Clearly," Fubuki said, the single word dripping with disdain. "New." That explained the lack of protocol, the ignorance of her standing. She was Fubuki, the Esper sister of the legendary Tatsumaki, the leader of her own formidable group. She commanded respect, or at the very least, professional courtesy. This man had just trampled all over both. "Next time you decide to help Naruto Uzumaki, wait for instructions from the ranking hero on the scene. That would be me." Naruto's grin faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of confusion. He looked at her, then at her two companions, then back at the destroyed monster. "But it was gonna hit you. You were all just standing there." The barb was unintentional, Fubuki knew that. Logically, she knew that. But it landed with the precision of a sniper's bullet, directly into the core of her deepest insecurity. Just standing there. It was the same accusation that haunted her, the same fear that she was merely stalling, managing, controlling the small things because she could never be the overwhelming force her sister was. This man, this orange-clad idiot, had just given voice to it without even trying. "We were executing a containment strategy," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. The air around her began to hum with psychic energy. Loose pebbles at her feet trembled. "One that you, in your boundless ignorance, interrupted. Don't mistake your raw power for competence." Naruto's eyes widened, not with fear, but with a sudden, sharp awareness. He held up his hands, palms out in a placating gesture. "Whoa, hey. I'm not trying to step on any toes. I'm sorry, okay? Genuinely. I'm still figuring out how things work here." His gaze was direct, and for a moment, it felt like he was looking past her anger. "I just reacted. It's a habit." The apology, simple and without a hint of condescension, was unexpected. It deflated her building psychic pressure slightly. He wasn't posturing. He wasn't challenging her. He was just apologizing. It was irritating in a completely different way. It made her seem unreasonable for being angry in the first place. Hellish Blizzard, ever the peacemaker, stepped forward. "Ma'am, the evacuation is complete. The immediate threat is neutralized." Fubuki took a slow, controlled breath, using her sister's voice in her head to recenter herself. "Control is everything, Fubuki. Lose control, lose the fight." She let the psychic energy dissipate. "Fine. File a report on the incident. Make sure to note the unauthorized engagement by a newly registered hero. She shot Naruto a final, withering look. Learn the rules, Uzumaki. Or stay out of the way. She turned, her coat billowing, and began to walk away, her group falling into step behind her. She didn't look back. She didn't need to see his face to know he was probably still standing there, looking confused and maybe a little bit sorry. The image was already burned into her mind. Later that evening, Fubuki sat in her impeccably organized apartment, a glass of red wine untouched on the table beside her. She had her tablet out, reviewing the preliminary report from the Hero Association on the day's incident. Her fingers swiped across the screen until she found what she was looking for, the new registrant file. Name, Uzumaki, Naruto hero name, pending, rank, Class C, provisional, power classification, physical enhancement, high, / unknown energy manipulation notes, registered without prior affiliation. Passed physical examination with unprecedented scores. Psychological evaluation, pending. Displayed significant power during initial assessment, destroying all testing equipment. Recommend immediate observation. Unprecedented physical scores. Destroyed their testing equipment. He'd looked at his own hands like he was surprised they'd worked. He wasn't pretending, he genuinely didn't seem to know the extent of his own strength. He was a Class C, a rank so low it was practically invisible, yet he had effortlessly obliterated a monster that would have required her and her entire team to subdue with careful, strategic effort. The thought was a cold knot in her stomach. He was a variable, an unknown element that could upset the delicate balance she fought so hard to maintain. Her world was built on tiers of power. She was at the top of B class, purposely holding herself back to remain the queen of her domain, a domain that existed in the shadow of her sister's overwhelming S-class presence. She had built the Blizzard Group to be her kingdom, where her strength was absolute, where she was never second best. And now this man had appeared from nowhere, a raw, untamed force with the social grace of a Labrador, and had casually done what would have been her group's finest coordinated victory. She set the tablet down, the image of his clear, confused blue eyes lingering in her mind. He wasn't arrogant like her sister. He wasn't posturing. He was just powerful, and completely unaware of the social and political landmines he was stepping on. He was a threat, not to her physically perhaps, but to the carefully constructed image of control and competence that was her entire identity. Across the city, in a small, sparsely furnished apartment provided by the Hero Association, Naruto sat cross-legged on his bed. He stared at the ceiling. He'd only been in this world for a few weeks, still getting used to the towering buildings, the strange food, and the concept of a Hero Association. Back home, being a hero was a title you earned, a dream you chased. Here, it felt like a job with rules and paperwork. He just wanted to help, to stop that creature from hurting those women. But the dark-haired woman, Fubuki, had looked at him like he'd personally insulted her entire family. You destroyed the primary target, created a debris field, her words echoed. She was smart. He could see that. She'd had a plan, and he just bulldozed right through it. He thought of Sakura, of how she'd always gotten angry at him for being reckless, for not thinking things through. This felt different, though. Sakura's anger was born of worry. This woman's anger was personal. It was about him, but it was also about something else, something he couldn't quite grasp. He hadn't meant to embarrass her in front of her friends. The memory of her face, the way her control had slipped for just a second, a tremor of raw power, told him she was someone who hated being shown up. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. He'd have to be more careful. He wasn't in Konoha anymore. The rules were different, and the people were more complicated. He was a stranger in a strange land, and he'd already made an enemy of the first real hero he met. The tension from their encounter hung in the air between them, an unresolved chord, and for some reason, he couldn't stop thinking about the flash of hurt he'd seen behind her fierce, dark eyes before she'd masked it with ice. 3 days passed before Naruto saw Fubuki again. He'd spent them doing what the Hero Association called patrols, essentially walking around his assigned district looking for trouble. It was mind-numbingly boring. Back home, trouble had a way of finding him. Here, he had to clock in and hunt for it like a job. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. A demon-level threat had been sighted near the industrial sector. Multiple heroes were being dispatched. Naruto's heart leaped at the prospect of something meaningful to do. He arrived at the staging area to find a small crowd of heroes already gathered, a mix of B and C class, their costumes ranging from practical to absurd. And there she was. Fubuki stood at the center of a small cluster of heroes, her dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, her coat immaculate despite the grimy surroundings. She was speaking in low, measured tones, gesturing toward a holographic map projected from a tablet Hellish Blizzard held. Her team, the Blizzard Group, listened with rapt attention, along with a few other heroes who had clearly deferred to her authority. Naruto hesitated at the edge of the gathering. He wasn't sure if he should approach or just wait for instructions. The memory of their last encounter was still fresh, the coldness in her voice when she dismissed him. He didn't want another confrontation. Too late. Lily spotted him first. "Oh, it's the orange guy," she said, pointing. Every head turned, including Fubuki's. Her expression didn't change, didn't soften, didn't harden. It simply became very, very still, like a predator assessing whether something was worth the effort of attacking. "Naruto Uzumaki," she said. Not a greeting. An acknowledgement of a variable. Hey," he said, raising a hand awkwardly. "I got the call. Demon-level threat? Happy to help however you need me to." A beat of silence. One of the other B-class heroes, a man in a garish cape and too much eyeliner, snorted. "Help? You're C-class, rookie. Your job is to follow orders and not die." Naruto's eye twitched, but he kept his mouth shut. He'd learned something about diplomacy in the years since his reckless youth. Sometimes silence was the smarter play. Fubuki watched him for a long moment, her dark eyes unreadable. Then, to everyone's apparent surprise, she spoke. "Actually, his power level, however undisciplined, could be useful." She turned back to the map. "The target is a molten core variant. It's been absorbing industrial waste and growing. Traditional attacks will be ineffective, it regenerates from heat. We need to cool it rapidly while containing its movement." She began outlining positions, assigning roles with surgical precision. Naruto listened, genuinely impressed. This wasn't just barking orders. She had thought through contingencies, escape routes, civilian evacuation patterns. She'd even calculated the structural integrity of nearby buildings in case the monster used them as projectiles. "Uzumaki," she said finally, and he straightened. "You'll be with me." The caped guy looked offended. "With you? Fubuki, he's—" "I'm aware of what he is." She cut him off smoothly. "Which is why he'll be with me. If his power is as excessive as his file suggests, I want it directed, not scattered. You'll hold the eastern perimeter. That's where the real strategic challenge lies." The guy puffed up slightly at the implication that his position was more important. Naruto hid a smile. She was good at this, managing egos while getting what she wanted. The mission unfolded like a choreographed dance. Fubuki's group moved first, using psychic pressure to slow the creature's advance. Other heroes peeled off to handle civilian evacuation and debris management. And Naruto followed Fubuki through the maze of industrial structures toward the monster's core position. "You're quiet," she said without looking back. "Trying not to mess up your plan," he admitted. "You clearly put a lot of thought into it." She glanced at him then, a flicker of something, surprise? Suspicion, crossing her features. Most heroes don't notice the planning. They just show up and punch things. "I noticed." He ducked under a low-hanging pipe. "Back home, I had a friend who was like that. Shikamaru. He'd think 10 moves ahead while the rest of us were still figuring out which way to run. Drove me crazy, but it saved our lives more times than I can count." Fubuki didn't respond, but something in her posture shifted. Softened, almost imperceptibly. They found the creature in a collapsed factory, a heaving mass of molten metal and twisted machinery that pulsed with sickening heat. It was larger than the reports suggested, easily the size of a small building, and it was moving, slowly, toward a residential zone on the other side of the industrial park. "Damn," Naruto breathed. "That's ugly." "Focus." Fubuki's eyes were already glowing with psychic energy. "I'll bind its limbs. You hit the core. The file said you have some kind of energy attack, use it. Aim for the center mass, where the heat is brightest. And if that doesn't work?" She gave him a look that suggested the question was beneath her. "Then we adapt. Now move." She thrust her hands forward, and Naruto felt the air pressure drop as her psychic power lashed out. Invisible force wrapped around the creature's multiple limbs, slowing its advance, pinning it against the remains of the factory wall. The monster roared, a sound like grinding metal, and struggled against the bindings. Naruto didn't hesitate. He leaped forward, channeling chakra into his palm. The Rasengan wasn't his strongest technique anymore, not by a long shot, but for a target this size, he needed something with precision. The spinning sphere of energy formed in his hand, humming with power. Behind him, he heard Fubuki's breath catch. Just barely, just for a second. He drove the Rasengan into the creature's core. The effect was immediate. The monster's molten body began to crystallize, the heat dying as the spinning energy disrupted its internal structure. It convulsed once, twice, then collapsed inward, a sculpture of cooling metal and dead machinery. Silence. Naruto landed lightly, brushing dust from his jacket. He turned to find Fubuki staring at him, her psychic glow fading, her expression unreadable. "What?" he asked. That technique, she said slowly. The energy sphere. It's not physical enhancement. It's something else entirely. Chakra, he said. It's complicated. I can explain it, but it might take a while. She opened her mouth to respond, but a crackling sound interrupted them. The cooling metal of the monster's corpse was contracting, splitting. A chunk of debris the size of a car broke loose from somewhere high above and plummeted directly toward them. Naruto moved without thinking. He was halfway to Fubuki, arm extended to push her clear, when he felt it, an invisible barrier snapping into place above them. The debris struck it and shattered, fragments spraying harmlessly to the sides. Fubuki stood with one hand raised, her expression utterly calm. I had it, she said quietly. Naruto lowered his arm, suddenly aware of how close he'd gotten. He could see the individual strands of hair that had escaped her ponytail, the slight sheen of sweat on her forehead from the psychic effort of binding the monster. Right. Sorry. Reflex. For a moment, neither of them moved. The dust settled around them. Somewhere in the distance, other heroes were cheering, celebrating the victory. You're fast, Fubuki said. It wasn't a compliment, exactly. More like an observation she was logging for future reference. You're stronger than you let on, he replied. That barrier wasn't casual. You had to work for it while still holding the monster. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I'm aware of my own capabilities. I'm not criticizing. He held up his hands. Just noticing. You're strategic. You think ahead. But you're also really powerful on your own. I don't get why you hide behind all the group stuff. The words hung in the air between them. Fubuki's expression shuddered, the brief openness he'd seen vanishing behind a wall of composure. The group is strategic. A coordinated team achieves more than a single hero, no matter how powerful. Yeah, but... He stopped himself. He'd already said too much. He could see it in the way her jaw tightened, the almost imperceptible stiffening of her shoulders. He'd touched something raw. Sorry. None of my business. No, she agreed coolly. It isn't. She turned away, pulling out her communication device to coordinate with the other teams. The debrief would happen later, she told him without looking back. He should wait with the others. Naruto watched her go, feeling like he'd failed some kind of test he hadn't known he was taking. The formal debrief was held in a Hero Association conference room 2 hours later. Naruto sat in the back, trying to be inconspicuous, while various officials and higher-ranked heroes discussed the mission's success. Fubuki sat at the front, fielding questions with the ease of long practice. Your quick thinking in binding the creature was exemplary, Fubuki, an official was saying. And your coordination with the other teams minimized casualties effectively. We'll be recommending you for special commendation. Fubuki nodded gracefully. Thank you. The team performed admirably. And the C-class hero who delivered the final blow? Another official asked, consulting a tablet. Uzumaki Naruto? His contribution should be noted as well. Every head turned toward the back of the room. Naruto shrank slightly in his chair. Fubuki didn't turn around. His power was useful, she said, her tone carefully neutral. But his integration into a coordinated response remains problematic. He operates on instinct rather than strategy. In a more complex scenario, that could cause issues. Naruto's stomach dropped. He thought, stupidly, apparently, that maybe they'd made progress. That she'd seen him trying. But she was right, wasn't she? He had almost gotten in the way. He'd moved to save her when she'd already had it handled. He'd questioned her methods. The officials murmured, making notes. The debrief continued, but Naruto stopped listening. Afterward, he lingered in the hallway, watching heroes filter out in small groups. Fubuki emerged with her team, her expression tired but satisfied. She saw him standing there and paused. You're still here, she said. Yeah. He rubbed the back of his neck. I wanted to apologize. For what I said earlier. About the group stuff. It wasn't my place. Fubuki studied him for a long moment. Her team hovered uncertainly nearby, clearly unsure whether to intervene. You're perceptive, she said finally. More than you seem. That's either an asset or a liability, depending on how you use it. I'm not trying to be a liability, he said quietly. I know what it's like to feel like you have to prove something. To be compared to someone so strong you can never catch up. He thought of Sasuke, of the years of chasing, of the gap that had once seemed insurmountable. It's lonely. Building walls doesn't help. Trust me. Something flickered in her eyes. Pain, maybe? Or recognition. It was gone before he could name it. Go home, Uzumaki, she said, but her voice had lost its ice. You did good work today. That's enough. She walked past him, her team falling into step behind her. Naruto watched her go, the strange ache in his chest confusing and unfamiliar. Hellish Blizzard glanced back at him once, her expression thoughtful, before the elevator doors closed and they were gone. 3 days later, an envelope appeared under Naruto's door. Inside was a single sheet of paper, crisp and formal, with handwriting so precise it could have been printed. Uzumaki. The Hero Association has requested a joint patrol rotation for District 17 next week. Given our previous collaboration, I've been asked to partner you with one of my group members for training in coordinated response protocols. I'm overruling that assignment. You'll patrol with me. Be at the North Checkpoint at 0700 on Monday. Don't be late. Fubuki. P.S. Bring your own lunch. I won't share mine. Naruto read the note 3 times, a slow smile spreading across his face. It wasn't friendly, exactly. It wasn't even warm. But it was something. An opening, however small. He folded the note carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket, right over his heart. Monday couldn't come fast enough. Monday arrived gray and overcast, a heavy layer of clouds pressing down on the city like a lid. Naruto was at the North Checkpoint at 0645, nursing a takeout coffee and trying to ignore the nervous energy buzzing in his chest. He told himself it was just a patrol. Just another mission. The fact that he changed outfits 3 times that morning was irrelevant. Fubuki appeared at exactly 0700, walking out of the morning gloom like she'd materialized from the fog itself. She wore her usual attire, the fitted black dress, the flowing coat, the impeccable grooming that made him feel vaguely underdressed in his worn jacket. Her dark eyes swept over him once, taking in his early arrival, his coffee, his barely suppressed fidgeting. You're prompt, she observed. Not a compliment. A data point. You said not to be late. He shrugged. I'm trying to follow instructions better. One perfectly arched eyebrow rose a fraction of an inch. Progress. Impressive. Was that sarcasm? He couldn't tell. He decided to take it as a win. Their patrol route wound through the northern commercial district, a maze of shopping streets and office buildings that hadn't fully woken up yet. The early hour meant few civilians, just delivery trucks and the occasional bleary-eyed worker heading to an early shift. Fubuki walked with purpose, her heels clicking against the pavement in a steady rhythm that Naruto found himself unconsciously matching. So, he said after 10 minutes of silence, what's the deal with District 17? Why the special attention? It's a transition zone, she replied without slowing. Residential to the east, commercial here, industrial further north. The boundaries create coverage gaps that monsters sometimes exploit. Regular patrols disrupt their movement patterns. Smart. He meant it. You think about this stuff a lot? The patterns, I mean. She glanced at him. I think about everything a lot. That's how you stay ahead of threats. Must be exhausting. Another glance, longer this time. It's necessary. They walked on. The city began to stir around them, shutters rising on storefronts, the first trickle of commuters heading for trains. Naruto found himself watching Fubuki more than the streets. There was something hypnotic about the way she moved, controlled and deliberate, every gesture precise. Like a sword sheathed in silk. A child's ball bounced across the sidewalk ahead of them, chased by a small boy who wasn't watching where he was going. He barreled directly into Fubuki's legs, bouncing off and landing on the pavement with a surprised oof. Fubuki stopped. Looked down. The boy looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to fear as he registered the imposing woman in dark clothing. I'm sorry, he squeaked. I didn't, the ball, I'm really sorry. For a terrible moment, Naruto thought she might actually be angry. Her expression was frozen, unreadable. Then, slowly, she knelt. Not gracefully, it looked like the movement cost her something. She retrieved the ball from where it had rolled and held it out to the boy. Watch where you're running, she said quietly. The street is dangerous. Not just because of monsters. The boy stared at her, then at the ball, then took it with trembling hands. Thank you, hero lady. Fubuki's lips twitched. Almost a smile. Go on. Your mother is calling. The boy scrambled up and fled. In the distance, a woman's voice echoed, sharp with worry. Naruto stared at Fubuki as she rose, brushing invisible dust from her coat. She caught him looking. What? Nothing. He grinned. Just, that was nice. You were nice. I'm not nice, she said flatly. I'm practical. A crying child attracts monsters. Calming him efficiently prevented a potential incident. Sure. His grin widened. Totally practical. Very efficient. She resumed walking, but not fast enough to hide the faint color rising on her cheeks. Naruto fell into step beside her, feeling lighter than he had in days. By midday, they'd circled back toward the industrial zone. The clouds had thickened, promising rain, and the wind carried the sharp tang of chemicals from the factories ahead. Fubuki had relaxed slightly over the hours, or at least she'd stopped treating every pause in conversation as a strategic failure. They stopped at a small park near the zone's edge, a sad collection of benches and scraggly trees that had somehow survived urban development. Fubuki produced a carefully wrapped bento box from somewhere within her coat. Naruto pulled out the convenience store onigiri he'd grabbed that morning. You actually brought your own lunch, she observed, sounding faintly surprised. You told me to. I told you not to expect mine. That's different. He shrugged, unwrapping a rice ball. Still counts as following instructions. Progress, remember? She made a sound that might have been amusement. It was hard to tell. They ate in a silence that felt almost comfortable, watching a few brave sparrows scavenge for crumbs. Can I ask you something? Naruto said eventually. You're going to regardless. Probably true. He finished his onigiri and brushed off his hands. Back at the monster fight, when I used the Rasengan, you reacted. Just for a second. What was that? Fubuki's chopsticks paused mid-reach. She set them down carefully, aligning them perfectly with the edge of her bento box. I didn't react. You did. Your breathing changed. I've been a ninja my whole life. I notice stuff like that. A long pause. The wind rattled the leaves of the sad little trees. It was the density, she said finally, of your energy. I've sensed many powerful beings, my sister, S-class heroes, monsters of various levels. But yours was different. Compressed. Like staring into deep water and not being able to see the bottom. Naruto considered this. Is that bad? I don't know yet. She picked up her chopsticks again, but didn't resume eating. Power without visible limits is dangerous. It attracts attention, creates expectations, becomes a target. You know about that. Her eyes snapped to his, sharp as broken glass. What's that supposed to mean? He held up his hands. Just, you're strong. Really strong. I felt it when you bound that monster. But you hold back. You let your group take the lead sometimes. You stay in B class even though you could probably rank higher. He chose his next words carefully. It seems like you're trying not to be noticed. Or at least, not to be noticed too much. The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend light. Fubuki's expression had gone completely blank, a defense mechanism Naruto recognized from his own past. Walls going up. Drawbridges retracting. You don't know anything about my choices, she said quietly. You're right. I don't. He met her gaze and held it. But I know what it's like to have people look at you and only see potential. Or threat. Or comparison to someone else. It sucks. And it's lonely. Something cracked in her expression. Just a hairline fracture, barely visible, but he saw it. For a moment, she looked less like the untouchable queen of the Blizzard group and more like a woman carrying something heavy. My sister, Fubuki said slowly, is Tatsumaki. The tornado of terror. The strongest esper in the world. Naruto blinked. He'd heard the name, everyone in the Hero Association had. Tatsumaki was a legend, an S-class hero whose power was measured in catastrophe. She's your sister? Half-sister. And yes, before you asked, the comparison is constant. Inescapable. Every achievement I make is measured against her shadow. Every monster I defeat is evaluated as impressive for someone at her level. Her voice was flat, but her hands had tightened on her bento box. The Blizzard group is mine. My creation, my strategy, my domain. In B class, I'm the strongest. I'm not competing. I'm not losing. I'm simply existing on my own terms. Naruto was quiet for a long moment. He thought of Sasuke, of the years of chasing, of the desperate need to prove himself. He thought of how the village had once looked at him, not with admiration, but with fear and suspicion. He thought of how even now, as a hero in a new world, he was still trying to find his place. That sounds exhausting, he said finally. Existing on terms someone else set, I mean. Even if you're the one choosing them. Fubuki looked at him. Really looked, for the first time since they'd met. And you? What terms do you exist on? He laughed, short and humorless. Wish I knew. I'm from somewhere else. Another world, actually. Long story. But here I'm nobody. C-class rookie with too much power and not enough sense. The terms haven't been written yet. A blank slate. Something shifted in her eyes. Interest, maybe? Or recognition of a kindred spirit. That's either terrifying or liberating. Both, probably. He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. But I figure I'll figure it out. I always do. The rain started then, soft at first, then quickly intensifying into a downpour. They scrambled for cover under the thin roof of a bus shelter, pressing together to avoid the spray. Fubuki's coat was suddenly very close, the fabric brushing against his arm. She smelled like rain and something floral, subtle and expensive. This is inconvenient, she murmured, watching the water cascade off the shelter's edge. Could be worse. Naruto was acutely aware of her proximity, the warmth of her shoulder against his. Could be monsters. As if on cue, a roar echoed from somewhere in the industrial zone. Deep, guttural, and hungry. They looked at each other. Fubuki's expression shifted from irritation to calculation in an instant. Your timing is atrocious, she told the distant monster. Want me to handle it? Naruto asked. I can be fast. No. She straightened, her professional mask sliding back into place. We handle it together. That's the point of this patrol. Coordinated response. He nodded, falling into step beside her as they left the shelter. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead, soaked through his jacket, but he barely noticed. They moved toward the roar as a unit, not quite synchronized but no longer separate. The monster was a mess of twisted metal and organic tissue, a scavenger type that had been feeding on industrial waste. It was smaller than the last one, barely tiger level, but it was fast, scuttling between piles of debris with unsettling agility. Fubuki's eyes glowed. I'll pin it. You. Neutralize, yeah? I remember. Naruto was already moving, chakra gathering in his palms. But he didn't go for the kill immediately. Instead, he circled, driving the creature toward her psychic grip. It worked. The monster, confused by his feints, blundered directly into Fubuki's invisible field. She clenched her fist, and the creature froze mid-lunge. No, she said. Naruto struck. One clean blow, precise and controlled, and the monster crumpled. They stood in the rain, breathing hard, looking at the corpse. Then at each other. That, Fubuki said slowly, was actually efficient. I had a good teacher. He grinned, water dripping from his chin. Well, for the strategy part. The punching part's all me. She shook her head, but there was something in her expression that hadn't been there before. Respect, maybe? Or the beginning of it. The rain stopped as quickly as it had started, leaving the city washed and gleaming. They completed their patrol in silence, but it was a different silence now, less wall, more space. When they reached the checkpoint where they'd started, Fubuki paused. You're less annoying than I expected, she said. For someone with your power and lack of discipline. Thanks. I think. She reached into her coat and produced a card, plain white, with a phone number written in the same precise handwriting as the note. If you're going to be useful, you should be available. That's my direct line. For emergencies only. Naruto took the card carefully, like it might break. Emergencies. Got it. Don't abuse it. She turned to go, then hesitated. Uzumaki. Yeah? What you said earlier? About loneliness. She didn't turn around, but her voice was quieter now, less controlled. You're not wrong. About some of it. She walked away before he could respond, her coat billowing slightly in the damp breeze. Naruto watched her go, the card warm in his palm. He didn't put it in his pocket. He held it all the way back to his apartment, reading the numbers over and over until he was sure he'd never forget them. That night, he stared at his phone for 20 minutes before finally setting it aside without calling. Emergencies only, she'd said. This didn't feel like an emergency. It felt like something else entirely, something he wasn't ready to name. In her apartment across the city, Fubuki sat by her window, watching the lights of the city reflect off the wet streets. She'd given her number to exactly 3 people outside her group. 2 were strategic alliances with higher-ranked heroes. The third was her sister, and that number went straight to voicemail for a reason. She didn't know why she'd given it to Naruto. He was unpredictable, undisciplined, and far too perceptive for comfort. He saw things she worked hard to hide. He asked questions she didn't want to answer. And yet, when she thought of him standing in the rain, water streaming down his face, grinning at her like they just shared a secret, she didn't feel the usual irritation. She felt something else. She pulled out her tablet and pulled up his file again. Stared at his photo, those clear blue eyes and ridiculous whisker marks. Then she set it aside and went to bed, telling herself she was just being thorough. The card stayed on her nightstand for the rest of the night, untouched and unexplained. Neither of them slept particularly well. 3 weeks passed in a pattern Naruto hadn't expected to find so comfortable. Patrols with Fubuki became regular, not formalized, exactly, but assumed. She'd send a text the night before, emergencies only, her foot, with a time and location, and he'd show up. They'd walk, talk about strategy or nothing at all, and occasionally fight monsters. It wasn't quite friendship. It wasn't quite partnership. It was something in between, a space either of them had names for. The Hero Association noticed. Of course they did. Fubuki was a known quantity, a hero whose every move was analyzed for signs of ambition or weakness. Her association with an unranked wildcard like Naruto sparked speculation. Some saw it as mentorship. Others, more cynically, as an attempt to acquire a powerful asset for her group. Neither interpretation was entirely wrong. Neither was entirely right. "You're being watched," Naruto observed one afternoon as they walked through a market district. A man in an ill-fitting suit had been trailing them for 3 blocks, pretending to examine produce. "I'm always watched." Fubuki didn't glance back. "Hero Association liaison. They're checking for inappropriate fraternization or something equally tedious." "Inappropriate fraternization?" Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Is that what this is?" She shot him a look that could have frozen water. "It's professional collaboration. Which they'd understand if they had any concept of how actual strategy works." He laughed, and something in her expression softened almost imperceptibly. She'd grown accustomed to his laughter, he realized. Maybe even expected it. The liaison gave up after another block, melting back into the crowd. Naruto watched him go, then turned to Fubuki. "So if it's professional collaboration, why do you keep texting me at midnight?" "I don't." She stopped. Considered. "Those were tactical questions." "About whether I tried the new ramen place near my apartment?" "Local businesses near patrol routes are relevant to resource planning." "You asked if I sleep with my window open." Fubuki's composure cracked, just slightly. A flush crept up her neck. The ventilation in your building is substandard. I was making a health assessment." Naruto grinned, wide and unrepentant. "Sure you were." She walked faster. He lengthened his stride to keep up, still grinning. The truth was, he looked forward to those midnight texts. They were usually brief, an observation about a case file, a question about his world, once just a single word. "Awake?" He'd replied immediately, and they talked until 3 a.m. about nothing in particular. The next day, she'd been her usual controlled self, but there was a new ease between them, a shared secret of late-night conversations. The invitation came on a Thursday. They'd just finished a mission, a minor demon-level threat that they'd handled with almost boring efficiency. Fubuki was reviewing notes on her tablet while Naruto stretched, working out the kinks from a fight that hadn't really required effort. "There's an event," she said abruptly. "Next weekend. The Hero Association hosts quarterly gatherings for ranked heroes. Networking, primarily. Boring but expected." "Sounds fun." His tone suggested the opposite. "You should come." She didn't look up from her tablet. "As my guest." Naruto stopped mid-stretch. "Come to a Hero Association party? With you?" "It's not a party. It's a professional gathering." Now she looked up, her expression carefully neutral. "Your profile is rising. People are curious about you. Controlling the narrative around that curiosity is strategic." "Strategic." He repeated the word, tasting it. "So this is about strategy." "It's about..." She stopped. For once, she seemed to be searching for words. "It's about not leaving things to chance. You're connected to me now, whether either of us planned it. That has consequences. Better to manage them actively than react to them later." Naruto studied her face. Behind the professional mask, he thought he saw something else, uncertainty, maybe. The fear that he'd say no. "Okay," he said. She blinked. "Okay?" "Yeah. I'll come to your professional gathering. As your guest." He smiled, softer now. "Should I wear something other than this?" He gestured at his worn jacket. Fubuki's eyes swept over him, assessing. "I'll arrange something." The event was held at a high-rise hotel in the city center, all glass and chrome and aggressively modern art. Naruto stood in the lobby, acutely aware that he'd never worn anything like the clothes Fubuki had sent over. Dark slacks, a fitted jacket in deep blue that somehow complemented his coloring, a shirt that cost more than his monthly stipend. He felt like he was wearing a disguise. Fubuki appeared beside him so quietly he almost didn't notice. She changed too, still dark colors, but the dress was softer, the cut less severe. Her hair was down, falling in waves past her shoulders. She looked, he realized with a start, beautiful. Not that she hadn't always been beautiful. But this was different. This was Fubuki unarmored, or at least less armored than usual. You clean up well, she observed, her eyes making the same assessment he just made of her. Right back at you. The words came out rougher than he intended. I mean, you look, the dress is nice. A ghost of a smile. The dress is acceptable. Come on. I'll introduce you to people you don't need to impress. The event was everything Naruto hated, crowded, loud, full of people performing importance for other people performing importance. Heroes of various ranks circulated with drinks and business cards, their costumes replaced by formal wear that made them look almost civilian. Almost. Fubuki guided him through the crowd with practiced ease, offering brief introductions. This is Uzumaki Naruto. He's working with my group on special projects. The phrasing was careful, not claiming him, but marking him as associated. People nodded, made small talk, moved on. Naruto smiled and said the right things and felt increasingly like a fish on display. Between introductions, Fubuki leaned close to murmur context. That one's angling for a promotion to A class. He'll ask about your power level within 5 minutes. She was right. The woman in green is harmless but gossipy. Don't mention the monster attack last Tuesday. She wasn't invited to that response and she's bitter. She was right about that too. He found himself watching her more than the crowd. Here, in her element, she was different. Still controlled, still strategic, but there was an ease to it, a fluency in the language of politics that he could only admire. She knew exactly how much to say to whom, when to smile and when to nod gravely. It was a kind of power he'd never bothered to develop, and watching her wield it was fascinating. You're staring, she murmured during a lull. Sorry. Just, you're good at this. It's survival. But something in her expression softened. One more circuit, then we can find somewhere quieter. The quieter place turned out to be a small balcony off the main hall, accessible through an unmarked door that Fubuki apparently knew about. The city sprawled below them, a million lights against the dark, and the noise of the party faded to a dull murmur. Better? She asked. Much. He leaned on the railing, letting the cool air wash over him. Thanks for this. The whole handling people thing. I'm not great at it. You're better than you think. You just don't enjoy it. She joined him at the railing, close enough that he could smell her perfume, the same floral scent from the rainy day. Enjoyment isn't required. Competence is. That's a sad way to live. She was quiet for a moment. Is it? I've always found competence satisfying. Knowing I can handle situations. That I'm prepared. It's not the same as happy. Happy is for people who can afford to be careless. The words were sharp, but her voice wasn't. Just tired. I've never had that luxury. Naruto turned to look at her. The balcony lights caught her profile, highlighting the elegant line of her jaw, the slight fro between her brows. Because of your sister? Partly. Partly because of who I am. What I am. She didn't look at him. An esper with power that's significant but not overwhelming. Strong enough to matter, not strong enough to be safe. The world is full of things that could destroy me. Preparation is the only defense. He thought about that. Thought about his own childhood, the years of being too weak, then too strong, then struggling to find balance. Thought about how he'd learned, eventually, that strength wasn't the point. That connection was. You know, he said slowly. Back home, I spent a long time trying to be stronger. To catch up to people who seemed impossible to reach. And I did get stronger, a lot stronger. But it didn't fix anything. Not really. She glanced at him. What fixed it? People who saw me. Not the power, not the potential, just me. Who stuck around even when I messed up. He smiled, a little sadly. Took me a while to realize that was the thing I was really looking for. Not strength. Belonging. The word hung in the air between them. Fubuki's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering behind her eyes before she masked it. Belonging, she repeated. That's a luxury too. Is it? He held her gaze. Or is it something everyone needs, whether they admit it or not? She didn't answer. But she didn't look away either. The moment broke when the balcony door opened behind them. A man stepped out, tall and imposing in an expensive suit, his silver hair swept back from a face that was handsome in a polished, artificial way. Fubuki, he said, his voice smooth as oil. I thought I saw you disappear. Hiding from the peasants? Fubuki's spine straightened, her expression cooling several degrees. Maxwell. I wasn't aware you were attending. Last-minute decision. The man, Maxwell, stepped closer, his eyes sliding over Naruto with barely concealed dismissal. And who's your friend? New bodyguard? Uzumaki Naruto, Naruto said, extending a hand. I'm a hero. Maxwell looked at the hand like it might be contaminated. Didn't take it. A hero. How charming. What rank? C class. The word hung in the air. Maxwell's smile widened, sharp and condescending. C class. And you're at an A class and above event? As what, the entertainment? Naruto's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice even. I'm Fubuki's guest. Fubuki's guest. Maxwell turned to her, and now his smile had something uglier underneath. Still collecting strays, I see. First your little group of B-class failures, now actual C-class. Tell me, is this about building a team, or just about having people around who can't possibly outshine you? The words hit like a physical blow. Naruto saw Fubuki flinch, barely, just a micro-expression, but he saw it. Saw the way her hands curled at her sides, the flash of psychic energy that flickered and died before it could manifest. You should go back inside, she said quietly. Before you say something you'll regret. Regret? Maxwell laughed. What would I regret? Telling the truth? Everyone knows why you hide in B-class, Fubuki. Everyone knows you can't handle real competition. It's why you surround yourself with weaklings, so you can feel strong without actually being strong. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Deep down, you know you'll never be your sister. Never even close. So you play queen of the sandbox instead of admitting you're afraid of the ocean. The silence that followed was absolute. Naruto could feel the tension radiating from Fubuki, the psychic pressure building despite her control. He could also see the truth in Maxwell's words, not the cruelty, but the kernel of insecurity they were targeting. The fear she'd admitted to him, indirectly, on this very balcony. He stepped forward, placing himself between Maxwell and Fubuki. Not aggressively, just present. A barrier. You're done, he said quietly. Maxwell raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? You heard me. Go back inside. Now. Naruto's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, a weight, a pressure, the same compressed power Fubuki had sensed weeks ago. She's not going to fight you here. She's too professional for that. But I'm not bound by the same rules. And I'm getting really tired of listening to you talk. For a moment, Maxwell looked like he might argue. Then something in Naruto's eyes made him reconsider. He stepped back, smoothing his suit with deliberate casualness. Interesting, he said. A C-class with an attitude. I'll remember this. He looked past Naruto at Fubuki. I'll remember all of it. He disappeared back through the door. The balcony was quiet again, the city lights twinkling below like nothing had happened. Naruto turned to Fubuki. She was standing very still, her face pale, her eyes fixed on some middle distance. The psychic pressure had vanished, leaving something hollow in its place. Hey, he said it softly. He's an asshole. You know that, right? I know. Her voice was flat. He's also not wrong. Bullshit. She looked at him then, startled by the force in his voice. Bullshit, he repeated. He's not wrong about the facts, maybe. You're not as strong as your sister. So what? Neither is anyone else on the planet. That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you a failure. And it sure as hell doesn't mean you keep people around just to feel better about yourself. You don't know that. Her voice cracked, just slightly. You don't know why I do anything. No, I don't. He moved closer, not touching her, just present. But I know you. A little. Enough to know you're not what he said. You're strategic and controlled and you think 10 moves ahead, but you're not cruel. You don't use people. You lead them. There's a difference. Fubuki stared at him. In the dim balcony light, her eyes looked wet, though no tears fell. Why are you defending me? I've done nothing but keep you at arm's length since we met. I've been cold and controlling it. And you gave me your number. And you texted me at midnight. And you invited me here tonight. He smiled, gentle. You're not as good at keeping distance as you think you are. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Hard to tell. She turned away, gripping the railing, her shoulders tight. I hate this, she whispered. I hate that he's right about the fear. I hate that everyone can see it. I hate that I care. Naruto didn't say anything. He just stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and waited. After a long moment, she spoke again. My sister, she's always been the strong one. Since we were children. I grew up in her shadow, protected by her power, defined by it. Everything I am is measured against her. Every victory is impressive for someone at her level. Every failure is proof that I'll never be her. Her hands tightened on the railing. The Blizzard Group is mine. The one thing that's completely mine. If I lose that, if I'm not their leader, their protector, then what am I? Just Tatsumaki's weaker sister. Forever. The vulnerability in her voice was raw, unguarded. Naruto recognized it, had felt it himself, years ago, when he'd been defined by the demon inside him, when every achievement was qualified by what he carried. Can I tell you something? He said. About where I'm from. She nodded, not looking at him. I grew up alone. No family, no friends, nothing. And inside me, there was a monster, a fox demon with more power than anyone could imagine. People hated me for it. Feared me. Defined me by it. He paused, remembering. For years I thought if I could just get stronger, just prove myself, I'd be accepted. I chased power like it was the only thing that mattered. And I got it. I got so strong that monsters and gods fear me. He leaned on the railing beside her. But it didn't fix anything. Not really. What fixed it was people who saw past the power. Who cared about me anyway. Who made me realize I was more than the demon inside me. Fubuki was quiet for a long moment. Then softly. Did you find them? The people who saw you? Yeah. He smiled. I did. And I'd do anything for them. That's the thing about belonging. Once you find it, you'll fight like hell to keep it. But you can't find it by being strong. You find it by being real. By letting people see you. All of you. Even the scared parts. She turned to look at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. You're very wise for someone so irritating. He laughed, surprised. I have my moments. They stood together in the quiet, the city humming below them, the party forgotten inside. When Fubuki finally spoke again, her voice was different, lighter somehow. Tentative. Thank you. For standing up for me. For listening. Anytime. He meant it. We should go back in. Before they send a search party. She straightened, smoothing her dress, composing herself. But when she moved toward the door, she paused. Looked back at him. Naruto. Yeah? You're not just a C-class hero. You know that, right? He grinned. I know. But thanks for saying it. She almost smiled, really smiled, before pushing through the door. He followed, feeling like something had shifted between them. Something important. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and small talk, but Naruto barely noticed. He was too aware of Fubuki beside him, the way she occasionally glanced his way, the subtle warmth in her voice when she introduced him now. Something had changed on that balcony. Something neither of them had named yet. Afterward, walking her to her car in the underground parking garage, he found himself reluctant to say goodnight. Today was. He searched for the right word. Not terrible. High praise. She unlocked her car, then paused. Naruto. What Maxwell said, about why I keep people close. That's not, I don't. She stopped, frustrated. I'm not good at this. At explaining. You don't have to explain. He shoved his hands in his pockets. I get it. More than you think. She studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she reached out and touched his arm. Just briefly, just a brush of fingers against his sleeve. Text me when you get home, she said. So I know you're safe. It was such a small thing. Such an ordinary thing. But from Fubuki, who guarded every gesture, it felt enormous. I will, he promised. She got in her car and drove away. Naruto watched until the taillights disappeared, then walked to the train station with a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the mild evening air. That night he texted her, home safe. Thanks for tonight. For real. Her reply came 3 minutes later, thank you for being there. Good night, Naruto. He fell asleep smiling, her words playing on repeat in his mind. Good night, Naruto. Not Uzumaki. Not the C-class hero. Just his name. It felt like belonging. But the world didn't stop turning because two people were figuring out whatever they were figuring out. And the Hero Association, ever watchful, had taken notice. The summons came on a Wednesday. Official Hero Association letterhead, delivered to Naruto's apartment by courier. He was required to appear for a performance review and classification assessment at headquarters. No option to decline. Fubuki's reaction, when he told her, was immediate concern masked by professionalism. It's standard procedure for heroes showing unusual growth, she said. They were walking their usual patrol route, though neither was paying much attention to the streets. Your file has been flagged. They'll want to understand your capabilities, your origins, your loyalty. You think they'll try to recruit me? Move me up in rank? Possibly. More likely, they'll try to control you. She glanced at him, her expression troubled. An unknown variable with your power level makes them nervous. They'll want parameters, limits, assurances. What kind of assurances? I don't know yet. She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. But be careful what you reveal. The Hero Association isn't malicious, but it is bureaucratic. They'll file everything, analyze everything, use everything. If there are parts of your past or power you're not ready to share, don't share them. Naruto considered this. He'd already told her more than he told anyone in this world, about Kurama, about the war, about being the child of prophecy. She'd listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions, and never once treated him like a threat or a curiosity. You worried about me? He meant it as a joke, but it came out softer than intended. She held his gaze. Yes. The word hung between them, honest and unexpected. Naruto felt something shift in his chest, a warmth, a weight, a recognition. I'll be careful, he promised. The Hero Association headquarters was a towering structure of glass and steel, all sharp angles and imposing presence. Naruto was escorted to a conference room on the 47th floor, where 3 officials waited behind a long table. Their expressions were professionally neutral, but their eyes tracked him like he was a specimen under examination. Uzumaki Naruto, the central official began. Thank you for coming. Please sit. He sat. The chair was uncomfortable, deliberately so, designed to keep people off balance. He'd seen similar tactics in interrogations back home. Your performance since registration has been notable, the official continued. Multiple demon-level threats neutralized. Consistent collaboration with B-class hero Fubuki. Physical assessment scores that exceed any on record. She consulted a tablet. We have questions about your background. I've answered those questions. In my initial interview. Yes, but your answers were. She chose her words carefully. Incomplete. You claim to be from a remote village that doesn't appear in any database. You describe training methods that don't align with any known martial arts. And your power signature. She glanced at one of her colleagues. We've never seen anything like it. Naruto kept his expression neutral. I told you the truth. Where I'm from isn't on any map you have. The training I received doesn't exist in this world. And my power. He shrugged. It's just what I am. Just what you are. The official on the left, a thin man with spectacles, leaned forward. That's not an explanation. It's an evasion. It's the only explanation I have. The central official sighed. Uzumaki, we're not your enemy. We're trying to understand how to classify you, how to deploy you effectively. If you have capabilities we don't know about, we need to account for them. For everyone's safety. Something in her tone, the implication that he might be dangerous, might be hiding something threatening, touched a nerve. He'd spent his childhood being treated as a threat simply for existing. He thought those days were behind him. I'm not dangerous, he said quietly. Not to civilians. Not to other heroes. That's all you need to know. It's not all we need to know. The thin man again. We've reviewed your collaboration with Fubuki. She's been unusually forthcoming about your capabilities. Her reports describe energy manipulation that doesn't match any Esper classification. Physical enhancement that exceeds S-class parameters. And yet you remain C-class, patrolling with a B-class hero, building what appears to be a personal relationship with her leadership. The insinuation was clear. Naruto's jaw tightened. Fubuki has been helping me understand how heroism works here. That's all. Is it? The thin man smiled, thin and unpleasant. Because our observers note that you spend significant time together outside of patrol hours. Late-night communications. Personal conversations. That's not standard mentorship protocol. Naruto stood. He didn't mean to. It happened before he could stop himself, his body reacting to the implication before his brain caught up. With respect, he said, his voice carefully controlled. What I do outside patrol hours is my business. Fubuki has been professional and helpful. If you're suggesting otherwise, you're wrong. The central official raised a hand, calming. No one is suggesting anything inappropriate. We're simply noting that your integration into our system has been unconventional. And unconventional variables require closer observation. Sit down, Uzumaki. The thin man's voice was sharp. We're not finished. For a long moment, Naruto didn't move. Every instinct screamed at him to walk out, to refuse this interrogation, to protect the fragile thing he was building with Fubuki from these bureaucratic vultures. But he thought of her warning, be careful, and forced himself to sit. I'll answer your questions, he said. But Fubuki stays out of it. She's done nothing wrong. The officials exchanged glances. The central one nodded slowly. Very well. Let's begin again. From the start. The debrief lasted 3 hours. Naruto answered what he could, deflected what he couldn't, and revealed nothing truly important. By the end, the officials looked frustrated but resigned. They couldn't force him to cooperate, and they couldn't prove he was hiding anything dangerous. He was released with a warning about continued observation and a temporary hold on any rank advancement pending further review. He walked out of headquarters into gray evening light, exhausted and angry. His phone buzzed immediately. How did it go? Fubuki's text. He stared at it for a long moment, then typed, "Can I see you?" The response came in seconds. "My apartment. I'll send the address." Fubuki's apartment was nothing like he expected. Given her control, her precision, he'd imagined something minimalist and cold: white walls, modern furniture, everything in its place. Instead, he found warmth. Bookshelves stuffed with novels and strategy texts. A kitchen that looked actually used, with herbs growing on the windowsill. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, a view of the city that stretched for miles. She met him at the door in casual clothes, soft pants and a loose sweater that made her look younger, less armored. Her hair was down, slightly tousled, like she'd been running her hands through it. "You look tired," she said, studying his face. "Long day." He stepped inside, taking in the space. "This is not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. White walls. Abstract art. A chair that looks uncomfortable but costs more than my apartment." She almost smiled. "That's my sister's aesthetic. I prefer," she gestured vaguely, "comfort." He wandered to the window, looking out at the city. The lights were coming on, thousands of them, painting the darkness in gold and white. Fubuki joined him, close enough that he could feel her presence without touching. "They asked about you," he said quietly. "About us. Implied things?" "I know. I was called in yesterday." Her voice was calm, but he heard the tension underneath. "They wanted to know if I was cultivating you. If I had designs on using you for the Blizzard Group. If our relationship was appropriate." "What did you tell them?" "That my professional collaborations are my own business, and that if they had concerns, they could file them with my attorney." A pause. "I don't actually have an attorney. But they don't know that." He laughed, short and surprised. "You threatened them with a lawyer you don't have?" "It worked, didn't it?" Now she did smile, just slightly. "They backed down. For now." Naruto turned from the window to look at her. In the soft light, with her guard down, she was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with her appearance. It was the strength underneath, the vulnerability she hid, the way she fought for control in a world that constantly tried to take it from her. "Why do you care?" he asked. "About me, I mean. Why do you keep showing up?" She met his gaze, and for once, she didn't look away. Didn't deflect. "I don't know yet. I'm still figuring that out." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." She moved closer, just a step. "You see me. Not the leader, not the weaker sister, not the strategist. Just me. No one's done that before. Not really." He thought of the balcony, of her vulnerability, of the weight she carried alone. Thought of his own loneliness, his own search for belonging. Thought of how, in this strange world full of heroes and monsters and bureaucratic nonsense, she'd become the person he most wanted to talk to. "I see you," he confirmed. "And I'm not going anywhere." Something shifted in her expression, hope, maybe, or fear of hope. Hard to tell. "I'm not easy," she warned. "I'm controlling and suspicious, and I push people away. Ask anyone in my group." "I've noticed." He smiled. "I'm stubborn and reckless, and I don't follow rules well. Ask anyone who knows me." "We're a terrible combination." "Probably." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. It was smaller than his, warm, trembling slightly. "But I'd like to try anyway. If you would." Fubuki looked at their joined hands like she'd never seen such a thing before. When she looked up, her eyes were bright. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Relationships. Trust. Letting someone close." "Me either." He squeezed her hand gently. "But we can figure it out together. If you want." The silence stretched, filled with possibility and fear and the electric tension of two people standing on the edge of something neither had names for. Then Fubuki stepped forward, closing the remaining distance, and rested her forehead against his chest. Not quite an embrace. Not quite surrender. Just presence. "This is terrifying," she whispered. "I know." He wrapped his arms around her, careful, gentle, letting her set the boundaries. "But you're safe. I promise." They stood like that for a long time, the city glittering below them, the quiet of the apartment wrapping around them like a blanket. No grand declarations. No dramatic moments. Just two people, holding each other, figuring it out. Later, they sat on her couch with tea she'd made, some herbal blend she claimed helped with stress. Naruto couldn't tell if it was working, but the warmth was nice. Fubuki had curled into the corner of the couch, legs tucked under her, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "The association won't stop," she said eventually. "They'll keep watching, keep testing. They're afraid of what they can't control." "Let them watch." He sipped his tea. "I've been watched my whole life. Doesn't change anything. They might try to separate us. Assign you to a different district. Limit our collaboration. Then we'll text more. Meet anyway." He shrugged. "I'm not great at following rules, remember?" She almost smiled. "I remember. It's one of your more irritating qualities. And yet here you are. And yet here I am." She looked at him over her teacup, and there was something new in her eyes, warmth, maybe. Or the beginning of it. "You're going to be a problem, aren't you?" "The best kind." He grinned. "The kind that sticks around." She shook her head, but she was smiling now, really smiling, soft and unguarded. It transformed her face, made her look years younger, made his heart do something complicated in his chest. "I should warn you," she said. "My sister will find out about this eventually. About us. She's protective. In her own way." "Tatsumaki? The tornado of terror?" Naruto considered this. "How protective are we talking?" "Very. And very destructively." Fubuki's expression sobered. "She won't understand. She'll see you as a threat, a distraction, someone taking advantage of me. She might try to test you." "Let her." He set down his tea. "I've faced worse than an angry Esper." "You haven't faced her." But there was something in Fubuki's voice, relief, maybe, that he wasn't running. "Promise me something." "Anything." "If she comes for you, when she comes for you, don't fight back. Not seriously. She needs to see that you're not a threat. That you're not trying to take me away." Naruto thought about this. Fighting without fighting. Letting someone attack him without defending himself. It went against every instinct he had. "I'll try," he said. "But I can't promise I won't protect myself. Or you." "Fair enough." She unfolded from her corner, moving closer. "That's all I ask? That you try." They sat in comfortable silence, shoulders almost touching, watching the city lights. When Naruto finally left, well past midnight, Fubuki walked him to the door. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked. "Patrol?" "Same time tomorrow." He paused at the threshold. "Fubuki?" "Yes?" "I'm glad I met you. Even with all the complicated stuff. I'm glad." She didn't respond with words. But she touched his arm, just briefly, the same gesture from the parking garage. Then she closed the door, and he walked to the train with a warmth in his chest that no amount of cold evening air could touch. That night, his phone buzzed at 2 a.m. "I'm scared," her text read. "Not of you. Of this. Of wanting something I've never let myself want." He typed back immediately, "Me too. But we're scared together now. That's better than alone." Her response took longer to come. When it did, it was just 3 words. "Yes. It is." He fell asleep with his phone in his hand, her last message glowing on the screen, and dreamed of nothing at all. The first sign that something had changed came 3 days later, during a routine patrol. Naruto and Fubuki were walking through a quiet residential district, discussing nothing in particular, her thoughts on a new hero's poorly designed costume, his attempt to explain ramen varieties to someone who never experienced real ramen. It was easy, comfortable, the kind of conversation that filled space without demanding anything. Then the air pressure dropped. Fubuki stopped mid-sentence, her head snapping up. Naruto felt it too, a massive psychic presence descending on them like a weight. The street seemed to dim, colors leaching away, sound muffling to nothing. "Run!" Fubuki whispered. "What? Who?" "Run! Now!" Her voice was urgent, terrified in a way he'd never heard. "She's here!" Before he could respond, a figure dropped from the sky, landing between them with enough force to crack the pavement. Small, child-sized, almost, with green hair that defied gravity and eyes that burned with power. Tatsumaki. The tornado of terror. And she was furious. "Fubuki." Her voice was high, almost childish, but the weight behind it was that of a goddess. "We need to talk." "Tatsumaki." Fubuki's composure was back, But Naruto could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands had curled into fists. This isn't the time or place. It's exactly the time and place. Tatsumaki's eyes slid to Naruto, and he felt an invisible force press against him, testing, probing, threatening. You're him. The C-class that's been hanging around my sister. The one everyone's talking about. Naruto Uzumaki. He kept his voice calm, even as the psychic pressure increased. And you're Tatsumaki. I've heard a lot about you. Nothing good, I hope. She floated upward, crossing her arms, looking down at him with undisguised contempt. Because I'm about to give you a lot more to hear. You're leaving. Today. Now. You'll transfer to another district, forget you ever met my sister, and never contact her again. What? Fubuki stepped forward. You can't just. I can do whatever I want. Tatsumaki didn't look at her. Her focus was entirely on Naruto. You think I don't know what's happening? You think I can't feel the way she's been acting? Softer. Distracted. Vulnerable. The word was an accusation. You're making her weak. I'm not making her anything. Naruto held his ground, though the psychic pressure was becoming uncomfortable. She's her own person. She gets to make her own choices. Her choices are mine to protect. Tatsumaki descended slightly, bringing herself to eye level with him. I've spent my entire life keeping her safe. From monsters, from threats, from people who would use her. I'm not about to let some unknown variable undo all that work. Tatsumaki, stop. Fubuki's voice was sharp. You don't understand what's happening here. I understand perfectly. Now Tatsumaki looked at her sister, and something in her expression shifted, concern, maybe, buried under layers of arrogance. I understand that you've let yourself get close to someone you don't know. Someone whose power is undefined, whose origins are unknown, whose intentions are unclear. I understand that you're risking everything, your group, your reputation, your safety for. She gestured at Naruto dismissively. This. You don't know him. I don't need to know him. I know his type. Drawn to power. Drawn to you because of who your sister is. Using you to get closer to me, to the S-class too. That's enough. Naruto's voice was quiet, but it cut through her words like a blade. You don't know me. You don't know what I want. And you definitely don't know your sister if you think she's that easy to manipulate. Tatsumaki's eyes flared. The psychic pressure intensified, and Naruto felt his feet leave the ground. He was lifted, suspended in the air, held by invisible forces that could crush him if she chose. One word, Tatsumaki said softly, and I scatter you across this city. One word, and you're nothing. Naruto! Fubuki's psychic power flared, pushing against her sister's, but it was like a candle against the sun. Let him go! This has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with him. Tatsumaki didn't look away from Naruto. He's the variable. The unknown. And I don't tolerate unknowns around my family. Naruto hung in the air, considering his options. He could break free. He was fairly certain he could. Kurama's chakra, his own power, the strength he'd built over years of war and training, it would be enough to overcome even Tatsumaki's psychic might. But Fubuki had asked him not to fight. Had made him promise to try. So he tried. I'm not your enemy, he said, forcing the words out against the pressure. I'm not trying to take her anywhere. I care about her. That's all. The pressure didn't lessen, but Tatsumaki's expression flickered. Confusion, maybe? Or suspicion of his sincerity. You care about her. The words were flat. You've known her for what, 2 months? And you expect me to believe you care about her? Time doesn't matter. He met her gaze, steady despite the discomfort. I know what it's like to care about someone. To protect them. To do anything for them. I've got people back home I'd die for without hesitation. I know the feeling. And that's what I feel for her. Not because of who her sister is. Because of who she is. Tatsumaki. Fubuki's voice was different now, not angry, not pleading. Something else. Please. Just talk to me. Without him. If you still want to destroy everything after that, fine. But at least give me that. The pressure held for a long, agonizing moment. Then, slowly, Naruto felt himself lowered to the ground. Tatsumaki's eyes never left his face. Wait here, she said. Both of you. If you move, if you try to run, I'll know. She looked at Fubuki. We need to talk. Alone. Fubuki nodded, her expression carefully neutral. She glanced at Naruto, a quick, worried look, then followed her sister into the air, rising toward the rooftops. Naruto stood alone in the shattered street, breathing hard, waiting. On the roof of a nearby building, the two sisters faced each other. Tatsumaki floated slightly above the surface, arms crossed, her expression a mixture of anger and something more vulnerable. Explain, she demanded. Explain what? Fubuki's voice was tired. You've already decided what's happening. You always do. Don't. Tatsumaki's voice cracked, just slightly. Don't do that. Don't make me the villain for caring. Then stop acting like one. Fubuki stepped forward, and for once, she didn't lower her gaze. He's not what you think. He's not using me. He's not trying to get to you. He's just someone who sees me. Really sees me. Do you have any idea what that's like? Tatsumaki was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. I see you. You see someone who needs protecting. Someone weak. Someone who can't handle herself. The words came out bitter, years of frustration bleeding through. You've spent my whole life treating me like I'm breakable. Like I'm something to guard, not someone to know. Because you are breakable. Tatsumaki's psychic pressure flared, cracking the rooftop beneath her. Because I've spent my whole life watching things try to destroy you. Because if anything happened to you. She stopped, her voice catching. You're all I have, Fubuki. The only family. The only person who matters. If I lose you. You won't lose me. Fubuki's voice softened. That's not how this works. Getting close to someone doesn't mean leaving you behind. It means having more people. More connections. More reasons to be strong. He's not strong enough to protect you. You don't know that. A pause. Actually, you're wrong. He's stronger than you think. Stronger than almost anyone I've met. But that's not why I. She stopped, searching for words. That's not why he matters. Tatsumaki stared at her sister. Saw something in her expression she'd never seen before. Not fear, not defiance, not the usual careful mask. Something open. Something real. You really care about him, she said slowly. It's not strategy. It's not politics. It's real. Yes. Fubuki met her gaze. It's real. And I'm not going to let you destroy it because you're scared. The word hung between them. Scared. Tatsumaki had never admitted to being scared of anything. But Fubuki had known her longer than anyone. Had seen through every mask since childhood. I'm not scared, Tatsumaki said automatically. Yes, you are. You're terrified. Fubuki moved closer, reaching out to touch her sister's arm. You're terrified of being alone. Of losing the only person who's always been there. Of someone taking my attention, my loyalty, my love. But that's not how love works. It expands. It doesn't get divided, it multiplies. Tatsumaki didn't pull away from the touch. Didn't speak for a long moment. When she did, her voice was small in a way it rarely was. He could hurt you. They all could. He could. Anyone could. Even you could if you wanted to. Fubuki's voice was gentle. But he won't. I know it. The same way I know you won't. The same way I know the sun will rise tomorrow. Some things you just feel. Another long silence. The city hummed below them, indifferent to the drama playing out on the rooftop. What do you want from me? Tatsumaki asked finally. Approval? Blessing? Permission? I want you to try. To get to know him. To give him a chance. Fubuki squeezed her sister's arm. That's all. One chance. If you still hate him after that, if you still think he's a threat, then we'll figure something out. But at least try. Tatsumaki was quiet for so long that Fubuki thought she might refuse. Then, slowly, she nodded. One chance? She agreed. But if he hurts you, if he even looks at you wrong, I'll erase him. Completely. No trace. Understood? Understood. Fubuki almost smiled. Now come on. Let's go talk to him. Together. They found Naruto exactly where they'd left him, sitting on a chunk of broken pavement, waiting patiently. He looked up as they descended, his expression careful and open. So, he said, am I still getting scattered across the city? Not today. Tatsumaki's tone was grudging, but there was something new in her eyes, curiosity, maybe. Or reluctant respect that he hadn't run. Fubuki has convinced me to observe. For now. Observe? She's going to spend time with us. Together. Fubuki moved to stand beside him, close but not touching. Get to know you. See what this actually is. Naruto considered this. Looked at Tatsumaki, small, powerful, fiercely protective. Saw past the arrogance to the fear underneath. Recognized it, because he'd felt it himself. The terror of losing someone you loved. Okay, he said simply. Tatsumaki blinked. Okay? That's it? No argument? No complaint? What would be the point? He stood, brushing dust from his pants. You're her sister. You matter to her. If you want to get to know me, I'm happy to be known. Might take a while, I'm complicated. A small smile. But I've got time. Tatsumaki stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Then, slowly, suspiciously. You're weird. I've been told. The smile widened. Want to get food? I know a ramen place. Best in the city. I don't eat street food. Then watch us eat street food. Part of the observation process. He glanced at Fubuki, who was watching the exchange with barely concealed amazement. Coming? They ended up at Naruto's favorite ramen shop, a small hole in the wall that definitely didn't meet Tatsumaki's standards. She sat rigidly at the counter, refusing to touch anything, while Naruto and Fubuki ate and talked. At first, the conversation was stilted. Tatsumaki's presence was like a pressure cooker, ready to explode. But gradually, something shifted. Naruto told stories about his world. Not the war stories, not the battles, the small ones. Training with Jiraiya. Competing with Sakura to see who could eat the most dumplings. The time he'd accidentally flooded an entire floor of the academy with a failed clone technique. He made himself human, approachable, real. Tatsumaki listened. Didn't comment, didn't approve, but listened. And Fubuki watched them both, her heart full to bursting. Later, walking back through the city, Tatsumaki floating alongside like an annoyed balloon, the silence was almost comfortable. He's not what I expected, Tatsumaki admitted finally. What did you expect? Someone trying to impress me. Someone performing. She glanced at Naruto. You didn't try to impress me at all. You barely acknowledged I was there. You seemed like you needed to observe, not be performed for. He shrugged. I've done enough performing in my life. Figured I'd just be myself and let you decide. Humph. But there was something in her voice, respect maybe. Or the beginning of it. They reached a crossroads. Tatsumaki would go one way, Fubuki and Naruto another. The moment of parting was awkward, charged with everything unsaid. Same time tomorrow? Tatsumaki asked. Observation continues. Wouldn't miss it. Naruto smiled. Fair warning though, tomorrow's patrol might actually have monsters. You okay with that? I'll manage. She looked at Fubuki, and for once, her expression was soft. He's acceptable. For now. Fubuki nodded, not trusting her voice. Tatsumaki rose into the air, preparing to leave. Then she paused, looking down at Naruto. If you hurt her. I know. Scattered across the city. Understood. He met her gaze steadily. I won't hurt her. Ever. You have my word. Tatsumaki studied him for a long moment. Then, without another word, she shot into the sky and disappeared. Fubuki exhaled slowly, tension draining from her shoulders. That was not the disaster I expected. Give it time. Naruto grinned. I'm very good at growing on people. Like mold. She laughed, actually laughed, bright and surprised, and for a moment, standing in the empty street with the city lights around them, everything felt possible. Walk me home? She asked. Always. They walked in comfortable silence, hands not quite touching, the night air cool against their skin. When they reached her building, she paused at the entrance. Thank you, she said quietly. For today. For not fighting. For being you. Thank your sister. She's the one who listened. He shoved his hands in his pockets. She loves you, you know. In her own terrifying way. I know. Fubuki looked up at the sky, where Tatsumaki had vanished. I've always known. That's what makes it so hard. When love and fear get tangled together, it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. Yeah. He thought of his own tangled relationships, Sasuke, Sakura, Iruka, all the people who'd loved him in complicated ways. But you figure it out. Eventually. She looked at him, and there was something new in her eyes, warmth, trust, the beginning of something deeper. Good night, Naruto. Good night, Fubuki. She disappeared into her building. He stood outside for a long moment, watching the light come on in her apartment, feeling the weight of the day settle into something like hope. His phone buzzed as he walked to the train. She likes you, Fubuki's text read. I can tell. She'd never admit it, but she does. He typed back, I like her too. She's fierce. Like someone else I know. Someone else? You. But with more green hair and less emotional availability. Her response was a string of emojis that might have been laughter. He was still smiling when he fell asleep. Tomorrow would bring more observation, more tension, more complicated family dynamics. But tonight, for now, this was enough. The call came at 4 a.m., dragging Naruto from a dream he couldn't remember into the harsh reality of his phone screaming against the nightstand. Uzumaki. Fubuki's voice was tight, professional, but underneath it he heard something else: fear. There's a situation. Demon-level threat, possibly higher. Multiple heroes already down. They're requesting everyone available. I'm on my way. He was already out of bed, grabbing clothes, mind sharpening from sleep to alertness in seconds. Where are you? Already on site. Industrial District, Sector 7. The old processing plant. A pause, heavy with things unsaid. Naruto, be careful. This one's different. The line went dead. He moved. The industrial district was chaos. Naruto arrived to find the sky lit with emergency beacons, the air thick with smoke and the distant rumble of something massive moving. Heroes crowded the perimeter, what was left of them. He saw bandaged limbs, exhausted faces, the hollow look of people who'd watched colleagues fall. Hellish Blizzard spotted him first, relief flooding her features. Uzumaki! Thank God. She's inside, Fubuki's inside. She wouldn't wait for backup. Where? She pointed toward the processing plant, a sprawling complex of rusted metal and shattered windows. From within came a sound like the world ending, deep, rhythmic, alive. He didn't hesitate. Didn't think. Just ran. The plant's interior was a nightmare of twisted catwalks and collapsed machinery. Naruto moved through it on instinct, chakra flaring, senses extended. He found her in the central chamber, and his heart stopped. Fubuki floated 20 feet in the air, her body wrapped in psychic light, facing a creature that defied easy description. It was massive, the size of a building, a shifting mass of flesh and metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its core pulsed somewhere deep within, a sickly orange glow that beat like a heart. But that wasn't what made his heart stop. It was the blood running down Fubuki's face. The way her arms trembled with effort. The cracks spreading through the psychic barrier she directed, the only thing keeping the creature's reaching tendrils from impaling her. Naruto. She didn't look at him, couldn't, not without breaking concentration. The core. You need to reach the core. My power can't. She grunted as a tendril slammed against her barrier, another crack spreading. Can't hold much longer. On it. He was already moving, circling the creature, looking for an opening. The thing was dense, protected, its core buried deep within layers of shifting matter. A normal attack would do nothing. He gathered chakra. Not much, just enough. A Rasengan formed in his palm, spinning, compressing. He made thousands of these over the years. This one felt different. Important. The first strike opened a wound in the creature's side. It roared, sound shaking the building, and half its attention shifted to him. Fubuki's barrier stabilized slightly as the pressure eased. Again! She called. Keep going! He struck again. And again. Each blow carved deeper, the creature's regeneration struggling to keep pace. But it was slow work, too slow. Fubuki was fading, her psychic light dimming, the blood on her face flowing faster now. Fubuki! He struck again, desperation lending speed. Hold on! Her voice cracked. I'm trying. The creature, enraged by his assault, turned fully toward him. Tendrils lashed out, faster than before, and he was forced to dodge, weave, abandon his assault for survival. The core pulsed mockingly, still buried, still safe. And Fubuki, freed from the creature's attention, dropped from the air. She didn't fall far, caught herself at the last moment, landing in a crumpled heap. But she didn't rise. Didn't move. Her psychic light flickered once, twice, then went dark. No! The word escaped him before he could stop it. No, no, no! The creature turned back toward her, sensing vulnerability. A tendril raised, aimed directly at her still form. Something broke inside Naruto. Later, he wouldn't remember the next few seconds clearly. There was heat, and light, and a sound like the world splitting open. There was power, more than he'd used since coming to this world, more than he'd allowed himself to use. There was Kurama's voice, distant and concerned, and his own voice screaming something he couldn't hear. And then there was silence. The creature was gone. Not dead, gone, as if it had never existed. The central chamber was empty but for a crater where its core had been, and Naruto standing in the center of it, his body wreathed in fading golden light. He didn't notice. He was already moving, already kneeling beside Fubuki, his hands hovering over her, afraid to touch, afraid to know. Fubuki. His voice was hoarse. Hey! Hey, come on! Wake up! She didn't move. He touched her face, gently, wiping blood from her cheek. Her skin was warm, that was good, right? Warm meant alive. But she was so still, so pale, her breathing so shallow he had to lean close to feel it. Please! The word was a prayer, though he didn't know who to. Please don't, I can't. Her eyes fluttered open. Naruto? Confusion, then recognition, then fear. The creature. Gone. He laughed, shaky with relief. You're okay. You're okay. She stared at him, taking in his appearance, the golden remnants of chakra still fading from his skin, the crater behind him, the utter destruction where a monster had stood moments ago. What did you do? She whispered. Whatever I had to. He helped her sit up, supporting her weight against his chest. You scared me. Don't do that again. I scared. She started to laugh, then winced, pressing a hand to her ribs. I think something's broken. Probably. We're getting you to a hospital. He lifted her carefully, cradling her against him. She was lighter than he expected, fragile in a way that terrified him. Naruto. Her voice was soft, tired. The power you used. Everyone will have felt it. Everyone will know. I don't care. You should. The association, my sister, they'll have questions. Demands? Let them. He carried her toward the exit, stepping over rubble like it wasn't there. Right now, I care about you. That's it. She was quiet for a moment, her head resting against his chest. Then, barely audible. I thought I was going to die. When the creature turned, when my power gave out, I thought that was it. But it wasn't. No. She looked up at him, and there was something in her eyes he'd never seen before, not gratitude, though that was there. Something deeper. Because of you. He didn't have words for that. So he just held her tighter and kept walking. The hospital was chaos. Heroes filled the waiting rooms, the hallways, the treatment bays. Naruto carried Fubuki through the crowd, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the way people parted before him like water before a ship's prow. He found a doctor, insisted she be seen immediately, and only when she was safely in someone else's hands did he allow himself to collapse into a waiting room chair. His hands were shaking. He looked at them, surprised. He couldn't remember the last time his hands had shaken. You're him. He looked up. A hero he didn't recognize was staring at him, face pale. You're the one who, we felt it. All the way out here. That power. The hero swallowed. What are you? Naruto looked back at his hands. They were still shaking. I don't know, he said honestly. Right now, I'm just someone waiting for news. The hero nodded slowly, backed away, disappeared into the crowd. Others stared, whispered, but none approached. The weight of what he'd done hung in the air around him, invisible but unmistakable. Hours passed. Or minutes. He couldn't tell. Tatsumaki arrived at dawn, descending through the hospital ceiling like she owned the place. She found Naruto exactly where he'd been for hours, in the same chair, staring at the same wall, waiting. Report, she demanded. He looked up. Her expression was fierce, but underneath it he saw the same fear he felt. The same desperate need to know. Broken ribs. Concussion. Psychic exhaustion. The words came automatically, memorized from the doctor's update hours ago. She'll recover. They say she'll recover fully. Tatsumaki's shoulders dropped slightly, a fraction of an inch, barely visible. Then her eyes sharpened on him. The creature. What happened? I killed it. I know that. I felt that. Everyone felt that. She moved closer, floating at eye level. How? Your file said physical enhancement, unknown energy manipulation. That wasn't manipulation. That was annihilation. Naruto was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he told her. Not everything, not about Kurama, not about the war, not about being a demigod in his own world. But enough. About chakra. About the power he carried. About what he'd held back since arriving. When he finished, Tatsumaki was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. You've been hiding this, she said slowly. Pretending to be C-class. Pretending to be ordinary. Not pretending. He met her gaze. I'm not ordinary. Never have been. But I'm also not that. Not usually. That was. He stopped, searching for words. I saw her fall. Saw the creature turn toward her. And something just broke. I couldn't hold back anymore. Tatsumaki was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she nodded. I understand. Her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. That feeling. When someone you. She stopped, shook her head. I understand. They sat in silence, two people who loved the same woman, waiting for news. Fubuki was awake by midday, propped up in a hospital bed with bandages around her ribs and N4 in her arm. She looked pale, tired, and utterly unimpressed with being confined. You're supposed to be resting, Naruto said from the doorway. I'm supposed to be leading my group. Resting is a distant second. But she softened when she saw him. Come in. Stop hovering. He entered, pulling a chair close to her bed. Tatsumaki had left an hour ago, convinced at last that Fubuki would recover, muttering something about giving you two space. That had made both of them stare in surprise. The doctors say you'll be fine, he said. Full recovery. A few weeks of rest, then back to normal. Weeks. She made a face. I'll go insane. I'll visit. Bring ramen. Sneak and contraband snacks. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm sorry. She blinked. For what? For not getting there faster. For letting you get hurt. For. Naruto. Her voice stopped him. You saved my life. You destroyed a threat that had already defeated a dozen heroes. Don't apologize for not being fast enough. Be here. That's enough. He looked at her, pale, bandaged, but still fierce, still Fubuki, and felt something in his chest loosen. I was so scared, he admitted quietly. When I saw you fall. I don't want to feel that again. She reached out, slowly, and took his hand. Her fingers were cool against his skin. Neither do I. She squeezed gently. So let's not. Let's be more careful. Together. Together. He repeated the word like a promise. They sat like that, hands intertwined, watching the afternoon light shift across the hospital room. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't romantic in the way stories made it seem. It was just real, two people, holding on, figuring it out. The Hero Association arrived that evening, officials with tablets and questions and the weight of bureaucracy behind them. Naruto met them in the hallway, blocking access to Fubuki's room. She's resting. You can talk to me. The lead official, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper glasses, studied him. You're Uzumaki Naruto. The one who… Yes. We have questions about the incident. About the power you displayed. About your classification going forward. I understand. He didn't move. Ask them? Here. Now. The questions came, about his origins, his abilities, his intentions. He answered what he could, deflected what he couldn't, and revealed nothing truly important. By the end, the officials looked frustrated but resigned. They couldn't force him to cooperate, and they couldn't deny what he'd done, saved lives, destroyed a threat, proven himself in the most public way possible. Your rank will be reviewed, the lead official said finally. Given your performance, an immediate promotion to A-class is warranted, with potential S-class consideration pending further evaluation. I don't care about rank. You should. It comes with resources, authority, access. He thought about it. Thought about what Fubuki would say, that rank mattered, that control mattered, that playing the game was necessary even when you hated it. Fine. But I stay in this district. I stay working with Fubuki. Those are my terms. The officials exchanged glances. The lead one nodded slowly. That can be arranged. For now. She paused. One more question. Unofficially. He waited. That power, the energy you released. Could you do it again? Naruto considered the question. Thought about Kurama, about the 9 tails sleeping within him. Thought about the years of training, the battles, the cost of wielding that much power. If I had to, he said. If someone I loved was in danger. Yes. The official nodded, something like respect flickering in her eyes. Good to know. Take care of Fubuki. She's important to this city. I know. He smiled slightly. She's important to me too. He returned to Fubuki's room to find her awake, watching the door. She'd clearly been waiting. Well? They want to promote me. A-class, maybe S eventually. And? I told them I stay here. With you. Something shifted in her expression, surprise, then warmth, then something deeper she quickly masked. That was foolish. You could have anything, any district, any partner, any resources. I want this district. This partner. He sat beside her bed, taking her hand again. I want you. However you'll have me. The room was quiet. Outside, the city hummed with life, indifferent to the moment unfolding within. Fubuki looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, and for once, she didn't hide. I don't know what this is, she admitted. What we are. What we're becoming. But I know I don't want to lose it. Lose you. You won't. He squeezed her hand. I'm not going anywhere. She smiled then, real and unguarded, and Naruto felt something settle in his chest. Not resolution, not completion, but peace. The kind that came from knowing, truly knowing, that you were exactly where you belong. Later, when she slept, he stayed in the chair beside her bed, holding her hand, watching the slow rise and fall of her breathing. The night deepened around them, and he thought about nothing at all except this moment, this quiet, this presence, this fragile thing they were building together. His phone buzzed. A text from Tatsumaki. She's lucky to have you. Don't make me regret saying that. He smiled in the darkness, typed back, I won't. Outside, the city turned toward dawn, and everything felt possible.